Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers with me, Murray, your weekly 10-minute fix of ancient warfare-related material, where I attempt to answer a question from a reader, viewer, or listener. You can ask us a question. You can follow us on Patreon. You can send us a postcard. You can send me an email. You can respond to a previous video, which is what we're about to do, or podcast. This is from Ralph. Hi, Murray. Thanks for your reply. However, I do disagree. Oh, I love a bit of disagreement. Both elephants and later chariots, i.e., not when they are used as taxis and missile platforms, are influential because they changed how the opposing army deploys and acts. The polybolos was available for maybe 600 years plus, but was not deployed to my knowledge. Elephants in particular were useful as anti-cavalry tools when placed on the wing during the Successor Wars. Chariots, when used against Alexander, were useless probably because getting 4 horses to charge together into a close formation unit with largely pointy objects on the front is just about impossible. If the French cavalry at Waterloo failed against a British square, who else would succeed? Elephants are expensive, so why not put an expensive polybolos in a howdah on top of an expensive elephant with a 2-man crew? This would give you extra range, good penetrating power, mobility, and an anti-cavalry effect. Of course, burning pigs would be their Achilles heel. That's a wargaming reference. In reality, making a polybolos was probably beyond most arsenals in the ancient world. The Chinese repeating crossbow, a real crossbow and not a torsion weapon, was deployed widely but had poor penetration, to some extent like elephants and chariots. Thanks for all your hard work on the podcast. My absolute pleasure, Ralph. You have the ancient authors at your fingertips. Yes, I do. Not all of them, though. To a question. Given that we are now beginning to be able to read the burnt library from the Vesuvius eruption, which ancient writer on military history that has been lost up to now would you like to be available from that source? Ooh, isn't that an interesting one? Okay. Well, military writers. So I'll restrict myself to military writers or writers who cover military history. So Vesuvius erupts in 78 BC. There's an argument about August or October. We don't need to get into that. Mainly the library at Herculaneum, of course, we're talking about, and these scrolls that have been fused that are now being read with, I think it's electron microscopy. I believe that's right, and I'm not going to try and say that again. I would love there to be the complete works of Polybius. That would be great. That would give us a lot more knowledge of military history than we have in the lost books of Polybius. I would love for there to be the complete books of Livy. You know, the great thing about that, of course, is that a library in the 1st century AD in Herculaneum is possibly likely to have those works. That would be kind of cool. That would be great. And obviously that would take years to get through and to analyze and to edit and translate and then absorb. It might turn a whole bunch of military history on its head. It might, make us reassess what we thought we knew in a whole bunch. Any one of these discoveries could rewrite known ancient history, which is kind of cool. It could also make the reputation of an ancient historian whose reputation might not be all that high because they may have guessed or speculated as to what happened in a particular war and be proven right by the discovery of one of these sources. And one of the things that annoys me about Ronald Syme, brilliant scholar though he is several times he goes, oh, they'll find something to prove me right at some point. And annoyingly, we have. But if you were to attempt to say that kind of thing in scholarship today, you would, you'd be laughed out of the room. And it's annoying to not be allowed to do that anymore. Anyway, even when you're right. I remember I read the novel tie-in to Braveheart written by Randall Wallace, a descendant of the Wallace clan. And his justification for his version of the movie Braveheart was that in his heart he knew he was right. And you're like, but you made significant errors of history. How can that be right? Anyway, I digress. So outside of Polybius and Livy, I think I would really like to find, for me personally, yes, and here's one right next to me, I would like to find the remainder of the original Tactica authors, the ones that in Aelian, Asclepiodotus and Arrian, they tell us that their later Tactica are based on. We've got the works of Cineas or Cineas. We've got multiple different authors who wrote Tactica. I would love to find even just one of those would be lovely. We've got several De Re Militari or De Re Strategica. Frontinus would be my first choice, but unfortunately he hadn't written his. Oh, maybe he had. Maybe it would be like in a new release section. So the eruption is 78 BC. We know that Frontinus is governor of Britain from 73 to 77 the eruption is 78 AD. We know that Frontinus is governor of Britain from 73 to 77 AD, replaced by Agricola. We think that he goes into retirement to write his De Re Militari, and that he then gets pulled out of retirement by Domitian in 82 to govern Germany. And then after he's retired again, after he's been proconsul of Asia in 86, he writes the Stratagems, which is the only thing of his that survives. So therefore, it's possible at the eruption of Vesuvius as a new release, fresh from the scroll shop, Frontinus's De Re Militari might be there. That would probably be top of my list. I'm revising my list. That would be amazing. I would love that. And of course, there's a De Re Militari by Cicero and several others from the centuries BC. Again, it would be lovely to have the Fabius Pictor, the originals. That would be kind of cool. Yeah, look, I think even if it's authors we've never heard of, that would be, again, history that turns known history on its head. Because if you find a complete author who we've never heard of before, and they will give us knowledge and go, oh, wow, this is stuff we don't know. Even if that perspective differs. So, for instance, if you have an author who we've never heard of, we've never read their name in any other existing source, and they cover a period of history that is covered by another historian, and they give a completely different perspective, that's like, oh, wait a minute, that throws everything out. And if they corroborate an existing historian, that's great too, because you're like, well, this unto now unknown historian corroborates the perspective in a particular historian. Part of me would like bits of Diodorus to be proven right. I think Diodorus is a much better source than he's given credit for. For instance, in Alexander's battles, especially the Battle of Granicus, I prefer Diodorus of Siculus's version of events to Arrian's or even to Plutarch's. It'd be really great to find some of the original sources that those later authors used. The history of Alexander by Callimachus or by Ptolemy. That would be amazing. Ctesias would be great. Ephorus. So many options. I suppose it comes down to likelihood. So outside of my new release, Frontinus De Re Militari, probably the most likely things that this library will contain would be Livy and Polybius. Perhaps we will get new manuscripts of existing works, which again is still useful because they can prove editorial readings of texts that have been speculative up to now. If we get a text of a work that already exists, but it proves a reading that's been glossed by a particular editor, that's good too. We can't be too greedy. We can be absolutely greedy, but it would be amazing. It would also be great if, having created this technology to read these scrolls, we actually go and find the Library of Alexandria and the Library of Antioch, simply because I don't believe that the fire, as described in Julius Caesar, burns the great Library of Antioch. It's in the wrong place. I think that the Great Fire of Alexandria, I think it's in the wrong place. It's underneath modern-day Alexandria. So not that I'm asking you to go and dig in your basement if you live in modern-day Egypt, but that's what I'd be doing. Anyway, join me again for another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers. Thanks for your question, Ralph. Really enjoyed thinking on that one. And I'll see you again for another episode of Ancient Warfare Answers. Thank you. Bye.